And our second main topic today comes to us from Terry Vanderstruck, who writes, "Hi, John. We often see almost casting stories like Will Smith in The Matrix and Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones. But I just heard one that makes my head spin. Did you know that the studio wanted Tim Burton to cast Steven Segal as Batman over Michael Keaton? How much of a disaster will that have been?" All right, thanks a lot for that, Terry. Now, for some of you who may be listening to that and going, wait, what? They wanted Steven Segal? Where does that come from? Okay, so here's where that come from. You guys will know and remember that this week marked the 30th anniversary of the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman, which kind of brought Batman to the big screen for the first time. Well, to commemorate that, an interview was done with one of the screenwriters, Sam Hamm, about it, and they were talking to him about it. And he revealed the following. He said, "There were a lot of people at Warner Brothers who wanted to cast it with an action star. They wanted to cast the part as Batman as opposed to casting it as Bruce Wayne. You don't need the martial arts expertise of, say, Steven Seagal or somebody like that because you can fake all that kind of stuff. Seagal was one of the people that was suggested to us. Believe it or not, he had just kind of appeared on the scene. People thought, holy cow, this guy's badass. He could be Batman." So there was actually some thought. Now, I want you guys to notice what is not said here, okay? What is not said here is that Warner Brothers was fighting us on this. You know, what they're not saying, what they're suggesting here is that the studio threw them a name. Say, the Steven Seagal guy, he's hot, he's upcoming, he's a big martial arts guy. This guy could be our Batman. What is not being said was that there was some tug of war between Tim Burton and the studio, where Tim Burton, Warner Brothers was insisting that it be Seagal. Tim Burton was insisting that it be Michael Douglas. Not like that, but it is kind of strange to think about how would history be different had they actually cast a Steven Seagal instead of a Michael Keaton. Because one of the things they said in that interview, Rob, that I thought was very poignant was the whole idea is like, look, you don't cast for when the guy's going to be in the suit. Because if you have to, you can fake that. You can get a stuntman in the studio, whatever. What you cannot do is fake it when it's him on screen acting. You can't fake that. So you got to go for the actor is kind of I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but you got to go for the actor, not the action star in it. And to me, that's the most profound thing. Because so much to me, Rob, that original Batman film, because so much of it was Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, I don't want to get into too much hyperbole here, but if they had done something like that and gone with a Steven Seagal, who, listen, I get as big of a kick out of Steven Seagal, brainless action films, snapping bones and arms as much as anybody, but come on, he is not a thespian. And I don't want to use hyperbole too much, but yeah, to go with what was written by the viewer, it would have been a disaster. It would have been an absolute disaster. Everything that was classic about it would have been gone. I guarantee you Jack Nicholson wouldn't have done the film had they gotten like a Steven Seagal the lead at that point. So I don't know, Rob, you hearing this story, how much does history change? And how, or maybe I'm being too negative about this. Maybe it wouldn't have been all that bad. How would it have been different if Steven Seagal had been in that role?
Well, first of all, it's not so preposterous. I actually started working at Warner Brothers in feature production right after Batman came out 30 years ago. My God. And Steven Seagal was a huge star at Warner Brothers. He had made these Above the Law, Hard to Kill, directed by Bruce Malmuth, who directed Stallone in Nighthawks. And he was in with Mark Canton, who's the head of the studio, and they were making a series of Steven Seagal, like 3-word movies.
Right.
How Hard to Kill.
They were getting into the Steven Seagal business at the time.
Yeah, they were in the Steven Seagal business, and Above the Law being the first where he plays Nico, whatever the cop's name was, and it was actually pretty good. I mean, now Steven Seagal has become a punchline, really. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it. So at the time, it probably made sense from a studio perspective. You know, they have a list of 10 actors or something, and they think of Batman as this physical character, has a lot of physicality, he has to fight. So it made sense because he's a martial artist, kind of. And so that doesn't surprise me. And people forget, everyone used to get really excited about Steven Seagal movies until like the 4th one came out and it was Hard to Kill, which was sort of ridiculous. So that doesn't surprise me. But yes, you got to go back and remember that people that were once in favor or not in favor. Hollywood is a fickle mistress, and you just never know when an actor or an actress who was hot one decade, 20 years later isn't so hot. And now we look at him now. Was he a cop on a reality show?
Yeah, he's got some kind of reality show of his own now.
And now, he weighs 300 pounds or something, and he can barely move. If he gets his hands up like this, it's a good day. And I think we forget that. But if you go back and you watch, if you're an action fan, watch Hard to Kill. He was a pretty charismatic personality, but I don't think Tim Burton ever really considered him. I'm sure.
I doubt Burton considered him.
Sam Hamm said that Warner Brothers was into him, and they were. I mean, so anybody I'm sure they talked about Clint Eastwood being Batman at one time because he's been a part of the Warner stable forever. And who knows?
But hey, listen, when you mentioned he was a martial artist, sort of, like, to be legit, there is a fighter that a lot of people consider maybe the greatest pound-for-pound fighter, combat sport artist of all time. That's Anderson Silva. He was like middleweight champion of the UFC forever. Anderson the Spider Silva, there was this aura of invincibility. And he even went and got training from Steven Segal. Like, Steven Segal would actually be ringside with him, looking as stupid as he's like... He would just be there with Anderson, would give him his big hug before he would go in to the thing. And I remember there was this one fight where Anderson Silva was fighting Vitor Belfort, who was this legendary killer in UFC. And Anderson Silva delivered one of the best knockouts ever with this straight up video game style, straight up the middle front kick to the face that just dropped him like a sack of potatoes. And I'll never forget this. They were interviewing Steven Seagal afterwards, and Steven Seagal said, "Yes, that was me. Anderson came to me." And I kid you not, this is exact. Anderson came to me and said, "Steven, show me the killer shit." And I taught him this technique. It was a front kick. I mean, it was a beautiful front kick, but it was a front kick. But anyway, so there is all that. Yeah, to me, would have been a complete disaster.
Or I have another perspective.
All right.
What if it would have changed the trajectory of Steven Seagal's career? Because he got trapped doing these 3-word movies where he's supposed to act like this. And so as an actor, just like you see some of these young kid Disney stars, that everything's going like this. And they think that that's the way they're supposed to act. Had Steven Seagal been cast at that point in his career when he was really hot and everybody was, drinking the Seagal juice. Okay, that sounded really weird. Sorry, that sounded really bad.
Hashtag drinking the Seagal juice.
That's going to be the comment section for days.
Yep, that's not going anywhere.
You're welcome. But back when he was at his peak popularity, had he been cast as Batman and had he gotten an on-set coach and they'd given him acting classes and really honed him in, and he learned the art of subtlety and the art of stillness, and people had seen him do that, perhaps all of a sudden he would have changed the trajectory of his own career, and he wouldn't have become the caricature that he is now. That's also another possibility.
Yeah, look, if he was suddenly put into a position where, listen, Steven, you can't just be deadpan. Now you have to act. Maybe it would have changed the trajectory of his career.
The opposite. Look at what happened for Ryan Reynolds when he did Blade 3.
Yeah.
He was not an action star, and then he did he did Blade 3, and he popped out all those muscles, and he was shirtless and oiled up, and all of a sudden,
how many times have you seen that movie?
By the way, that's all
once
Canadians.
Or twice.
I just want to let you go. That's all male Canadians. We all have that inherent gene. Just so you know, Brian's not the only one.
I've seen you shirtless, John. I know. I know.
Drink the Seagal juice. All right, guys, listen. What do you guys think about all this? How do you think history would have been different if a Steven Seagal had actually ended up being Batman instead of Michael Keaton? Jump down in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, with that down, let's move